I can name a few contradictions in the Bible. So the Bible says that God is all-knowing. Psalm 147:5 says that his understanding is infinite. 1 John 3:20 says that God knows all things. Matthew 10:30 says that he knows the number of hairs on our heads. But in Genesis chapter 18, God says he's going to go down to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to know how sinful they're being. An all-knowing God would know that. He wouldn't have to go down there. Also, an all-present God would already be there.
The passage in question here is from Genesis chapter 18, verse 20 to 21. It reads, "Then the Lord said, How great is the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah, and how very grave their sin. I must go down and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me, and if not, I will know." This would be a good argument against, say, a fundamentalist Christian who reads the Bible literally. But any basic biblical scholar, or even just a regular Christian, would see this as figurative language, and not that literally God did not know what Sodom and Gomorrah was doing, and that he was not literally present there already. It's quite obvious from the text that the author of Genesis is explaining the deeds of God in human terms, so that the story is understandable in comprehension. In fact, many early church fathers, like St. Augustine of Hippo, never held to a literal reading or interpretation of Genesis in places like the creation account. Many biblical scholars have also noted that the various ages in Genesis, which go into the hundreds of years, are not meant to be taken literally. One must be careful to read Genesis in such a literal way, and one must make sure to respect the literary conventions used by the author.
Another contradiction, or I guess inconsistency, is that in the books of Matthew and Luke, in the resurrection story, it says that the women who discovered the empty tomb ran off and told everyone that the tomb was empty. But in the book of Mark, it says that the women were afraid and didn't tell anyone.
The passage being spoken of is from Mark chapter 16. For context of the situation, we read, starting in verse 5, "As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, 'Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you.' So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid." So did the woman really tell no one, including the disciples? Historical scholar Larry Hurtado says this: "It is a far more reasonable reading of 16:8 to see it as indicating that the woman said nothing to anyone other than the ones to whom they were sent, thereby explaining why news of Jesus' resurrection did not become public until it was proclaimed through the witness of the 12 and of others who were chosen by the risen Jesus for this task." As well, New Testament scholar Mike Licona states, "And they said nothing to anyone on their way to tell the disciples the news, for they had a reverential fear as a result of the revelation that kept them laser focused on their assigned task." In fact, another prominent New Testament scholar is that of Dale Allison. He states, "Near to hand then is the inference that the angel must after all have gotten his message through to the disciples via the woman."
Then of course there's the whole God is love, but then it also says that love is patient and kind, never jealous or boast. But then it says that God is a jealous God, so how could God be love if love isn't jealous?
The passage in this case is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, where we read, "Love is patient, love is kind, it is not jealous. Love does not brag, it is not arrogant." If God is love, and God is a jealous God, but love is not jealous, then how can we reconcile this contradiction? To start off, it's important to understand how Paul uses the word jealousy, because from his own words, he sees morally good forms of jealousy. For example, we read in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1 to 2, "I wish you would put up with me in a little foolishness. Yes, do put up with me. I feel a divine jealousy for you, for I promised you in marriage to one husband to present you as a chaste virgin to Christ." Notice Paul's own usage of the word jealousy. He states he feels a divine jealousy towards the people of God. Of course, this can easily be compared to God, who is divine and therefore has a divine jealousy towards his people of Israel, in which we read about in, say, Exodus chapter 20, verse 5. Therefore, from this, we can conclude that when Paul says, love is not jealous, he's not talking about the divine jealousy that, for example, God has in the Old Testament.
Yeah, there are a lot more. There's dozens. Those are just a few that stuck out to me. And I know most Christians watching this are going to be like, oh, well, this means this, and this is actually this, and jumping through hoops to try to make it make sense.
In this video, I presented the actual context and historical meaning of the various quote-unquote contradictions in which he brought up. I hope it's clear that I'm not jumping through hoops to come to these conclusions. Furthermore, many of the points I brought up were based on the extensive works of historical scholars who are far more educated than you or I in this field of knowledge.
Christianity made sense, there wouldn't be 45,000 denominations.
I agree. 45,000 denominations is illogical. That is why I and 1.3 other billion Catholics follow the one apostolic church which has historically existed since the apostles themselves. And we see this trace of lineage through the very earliest church fathers, like Ignatius of Antioch, who is connected to the apostles themselves. Thank you for watching, and God bless.